In a luxury restaurant, a millionaire tries in vain to feed his special child, who rejects any help. Suddenly, a young waitress approaches and delicately wins the trust of the child in a wheelchair. The impossible happens before everyone. The boy accepts food for the first time in months. The father, paralyzed by the scene, barely imagines that this moment will forever change the destiny of their lives. Emma Mitchell expertly balanced 3 plates of seared scallops along her forearm as she navigated through Bellamy's, the most exclusive restaurant in Boston. The chandeliers cast a warm glow over the white tablecloths and crystal glasses, creating an atmosphere of refined luxury that contrasted sharply with the cramped apartment she shared with her grandmother and brother across town. Table 7's. Appetizers, she whispered to herself, maintaining the poised smile that had become second nature during her 3 years working here. The restaurant job paid well enough to cover her grandmother's medication and the specialized therapy sessions for her brother Lucas, who had been diagnosed with autism at age 4. Every night as she served Boston's elite their $400 dinners, Emma tried not to think about the psychology degree she'd abandoned 2 years ago, when her grandmother Margaret had suffered a severe stroke. As the only financially capable adult in the family, Emma had made the choice without hesitation, though sometimes the textbooks gathering dust on her shelf seemed to mock her deferred dreams. The maître d' caught her attention with a subtle nod toward the private dining section. "Emma, Mr. Westbrook is requesting you specifically for his party." Emma suppressed a sigh. Jeffrey Westbrook was a regular who tipped generously, but whose eyes lingered too long on her. She'd become adept at gracefully deflecting unwanted attention while maintaining the professional demeanor Bellamy's demanded. "Of course," she replied, straightening her black uniform. As she approached the private section, a commotion from the far corner caught her attention. A man in an impeccably tailored suit was hunched over a specialized wheelchair, his voice low but increasingly desperate. "Please, Oliver, just one bite. For Daddy, please?" The boy in the wheelchair rocked slightly, his eyes fixed on a spot on the wall. He appeared to be about 5 years old, with curly brown hair and delicate features that resembled the man's, but his body was rigid with tension. Emma recognized the scene immediately. The tight set of the boy's shoulders, the averted gaze, the slight rocking motion, all reminiscent of Lucas during sensory overload. The father was clearly at his wit's end, attempting to coax a spoonful of soup into his son's firmly closed mouth while trying to keep his voice calm. "Sir, is everything all right?" A server named Jason approached tentatively. "Yes, fine," the man snapped, then immediately softened. "I'm sorry, it's just, we're having a difficult moment." Emma watched as the server backed away, relief evident on his face. She should have continued to Mr. Westbrook's table, but something held her in place. The man's expression, a mixture of love, desperation, and bone-deep exhaustion, was one she'd seen countless times on her grandmother's face when dealing with Lucas. Making a split-second decision that could cost her job, Emma approached their table. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly. "I couldn't help noticing. Would you mind if I tried something?" The man looked up, his blue eyes rimmed with fatigue and wariness. "You're not our server." "No, sir. I'm Emma. She hesitated, then decided on honesty. "My brother has autism. I thought perhaps I could help." Something in her words caused the man's shoulders to slump slightly, not in defeat but in a marginal release of tension. "Nathan Blackwell," he introduced himself with a nod. "And this is Oliver. He has autism and cerebral palsy." His voice held no apology, just a statement of fact. "We've tried 3 restaurants this week. I just want him to eat something." Emma nodded and crouched to Oliver's eye level, careful to remain at a respectful distance. "Hi, Oliver," she said, not expecting or demanding a response. "The lights are pretty bright in here, aren't they? And there are lots of noises." Oliver continued rocking, but Emma noticed a subtle shift in his focus. "May I?" she asked Nathan, gesturing to the wheelchair. Nathan nodded, and Emma gently repositioned Oliver's wheelchair so that he faced away from the main dining area and the brightest lights. She then took the napkin from the table and draped it over the metal utensils, muffling their potential clinking. "My brother doesn't like metal spoons," she explained quietly to Nathan. "The sensation is too much sometimes. Do you have a plastic one by any chance?" Nathan shook his head, but immediately called over the maitre d' and requested one. Emma noticed how the staff jumped to attention. Clearly, Nathan Blackwell was someone important. While they waited, Emma simply sat quietly near Oliver, not invading his space, not making demands. After a moment, she hummed a simple, repetitive tune, the one that often calmed Lucas during his most overwhelmed moments. "You're safe here," she said to Oliver in an even, gentle tone. "No one's going to make you do anything. We're just sitting together." When the plastic spoon arrived, Emma placed it on the table within Oliver's line of sight, making no move to pick it up. "Oliver, I'm going to eat a little soup now, okay? Just me." She took a clean spoon and had a small taste of the soup in Oliver's bowl. It's carrot. Not too hot." Nathan watched with a mixture of skepticism and desperate hope as Emma continued her gentle, one-sided conversation with Oliver, never pushing, never insisting. After several minutes, she slowly picked up the plastic spoon, dipped it into the soup and held it out, not pressing it to Oliver's lips, but simply offering. The moment stretched, taut with tension. Oliver's eyes flickered to the spoon, then away, then back again. Then, in a movement that caused Nathan to inhale sharply, Oliver leaned forward and accepted the spoonful of soup. "Good soup, isn't it?" Emma said conversationally, as if children accepting food from her was the most natural thing in the world. She dipped the spoon again, and again Oliver accepted it. Nathan Blackwell sat frozen, watching his son, who had refused to eat in public for months, who had rejected every caregiver and specialist, calmly taking spoonfuls of soup from this waitress. "How are you?" he began, then fell silent, as Oliver accepted a third spoonful. "My brother taught me," Emma replied simply. "Sometimes it's about changing the environment, not changing the child." She offered Oliver another spoonful. "And sometimes strangers can do what family can't, simply because we don't carry the weight of past struggles." By the time Oliver had consumed half the bowl of soup, Nathan's eyes were suspiciously bright. Emma gently placed the spoon down and stood up. "I should get back to my other tables," she said, suddenly remembering her job with a jolt of anxiety. Mr. Westbrook would be furious by now. "Wait," Nathan said, reaching into his jacket. "Please, let me—" "No tip necessary," Emma interjected quickly. "I'm glad I could help." "It's not that." Nathan pulled out a business card instead of his wallet. "I'd like to talk to you about something more substantial than a tip. Could you come by my office tomorrow?" Emma stared at the business card in her hand. Nathan Blackwell, CEO, Blackwell Innovations. The embossed lettering caught the morning light filtering through her grandmother's kitchen window. She'd spent half the night researching him after her shift, a tech mogul whose company specialized in medical technology, worth billions, widowed, when Oliver was just an infant. "You're going, right?" Margaret asked, shuffling into the kitchen in her robe. At 73, her body was frail from multiple strokes, but her mind remained sharp. "I don't know, Gram," Emma replied, pouring her grandmother's morning pills into a small cup. "What could someone like him possibly want with me?" From the living room came the familiar sounds of Lucas's morning routine, the same educational program he'd watched every morning for years, his soft mumbling as he repeated phrases that comforted him. "Maybe he wants to thank you properly," Margaret suggested, "taking her medication with practiced efficiency. Or offer you a job. God knows we could use the money." Emma's eyes drifted to the stack of medical bills on the counter. Lucas needed specialized therapy they could barely afford, and her grandmother's medication costs increased every month. Still, something about the situation made her uneasy. What if he's just another rich guy who thinks he can buy whatever he wants? She tucked the business card into her pocket. "Besides, I'm not qualified for anything in his world." "You were 3 semesters away from your psychology degree before—" Margaret trailed off, the familiar guilt settling between them. "Before I made my choice," Emma finished firmly. "And I'd make it again." She kissed her grandmother's forehead. "I'll go, just to see what he wants." The Blackwell Innovations headquarters occupied a gleaming tower in downtown Boston. Emma felt underdressed in her best blouse and only pair of dress pants as she gave her name to the receptionist. "Ms. Mitchell," the receptionist's eyebrows rose slightly. "Mr. Blackwell is expecting you. Take the executive elevator to the top floor." The private office suite was larger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Boston Harbor, and original artwork adorned the walls. Nathan Blackwell rose from behind a massive desk when she entered. "Ms. Mitchell." "Thank you for coming." His handshake was firm but brief. Up close, she noticed the fine lines around his eyes, signs of stress rather than age. At perhaps 35, he was younger than she'd expected for someone so successful. "Your office is very—" Emma searched for the right word. "Excessive?" Nathan suggested with a self-deprecating smile. "My mother designed it. She believes appearances matter in business." He gestured toward a seating area where coffee and pastries waited. "Please sit. I'll be direct about why I asked you here." Emma perched on the edge of a leather armchair, declining his offer of coffee with a shake of her head. Yesterday was the first time in almost 6 months that Oliver has eaten a full meal in public, Nathan said, his professional demeanor slipping to reveal the concerned father beneath. "The last 3 specialists we hired lasted less than a week. He rejects most caregivers immediately. Children with autism often struggle with transitions and new people," Emma offered cautiously. "Yes, I'm aware of the textbook explanations," Nathan replied with a hint of frustration. "We've consulted specialists across the country. Oliver's combination of autism and cerebral palsy presents unique challenges." He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Ms. Mitchell, I'd like to hire you as Oliver's therapeutic companion." Emma blinked in surprise. "Mr. Blackwell, I'm flattered, but I'm not qualified. I didn't even finish my psychology degree." "Yet you accomplished in 10 minutes what specialized therapists couldn't achieve in months," he countered. "You have an instinct, a natural ability with Oliver that can't be taught." "Based on one interaction?" Emma shook her head. "That's not enough to—" "I'll pay you 3 times your current salary," Nathan interrupted, "plus benefits, including health insurance that would cover any family members you support." Emma's breath caught. Health insurance would mean proper care for Lucas and her grandmother. "Additionally," Nathan continued, watching her carefully, "I'd cover the costs for you to complete your degree, should you wish to do so." The offer was almost too perfect, triggering her natural skepticism. "Why would you do all that for someone you just met?" Nathan's expression softened. "Because my son ate soup." He stood and walked to his desk, returning with a tablet. "This is Oliver at his last birthday." The video showed a solemn little boy in a wheelchair, barely reacting as people sang around him. "His condition has worsened since his previous caregiver left. He barely eats, rarely sleeps through the night, and has stopped the limited verbal communication he once had." Emma watched the footage, recognizing the signs of sensory overload and emotional withdrawal. "Yesterday," Nathan continued, "he ate soup, looked at you directly twice, and didn't have a meltdown in a noisy restaurant. You may not have formal qualifications, Miss Mitchell, but you have something more valuable, an ability to connect with my son." Emma hesitated, torn between opportunity and uncertainty. "I'd need to think about it. Talk to my family." "Of course." Nathan handed her a folder. "This contains the formal offer, including salary, benefits, and expectations. It would be a 3-month trial period initially." As Emma reached for the folder, their fingers brushed momentarily. She felt an unexpected jolt that had nothing to do with static electricity and everything to do with the intensity in his blue eyes. "What about your other job?" he asked. "At the restaurant?" "I'd need to give notice," Emma replied, trying to maintain her professional composure. 2 weeks at least." Nathan nodded. "That's reasonable, but I'd like you to meet Oliver again before you decide. Would you be willing to join us for lunch this weekend, somewhere quiet of your choosing?" Emma considered the request. "There's a small park near Jamaica Pond. My brother likes it because it's less crowded than the public garden. They have picnic tables in a shaded area." Saturday at noon? Nathan suggested. That works, Emma agreed, standing to leave. At the door she paused. Mr. Blackwell, this is a very generous offer, but I need to be clear about something. He raised an eyebrow in question. If I take this position, my priority will be Oliver's well-being, not meeting arbitrary developmental milestones or creating some version of normalcy that makes adults more comfortable. I'd focus on helping him navigate his world in ways that work for him. For the first time, Blackwell smiled fully, transforming his serious face. Ms. Mitchell, that's exactly why I want to hire you. The smile lingered in Emma's mind as she rode the elevator down. By the time she reached the lobby, she'd almost convinced herself this opportunity was too good to be true. People like her didn't suddenly get offered life-changing positions by billionaires. Yet the folder in her hands felt solid enough, and when she opened it on the train ride home, the numbers on the employment contract made her breath catch. The salary alone would solve their financial problems, and the health insurance would cover Lucas's therapy needs. So, Margaret asked when Emma walked through the door, what did the rich man want? He offered me a job, Emma replied, still dazed, as a therapeutic companion for his son. That's wonderful. Her grandmother clapped her hands together. When do you start? I haven't accepted yet. We're meeting again on Saturday so I can spend more time with Oliver. Lucas appeared in the doorway, rocking slightly as he always did when excited or anxious. Emma home, he stated, his standard greeting. Yes, buddy, I'm home. She hugged him gently, careful not to overwhelm him with sensory input. How was therapy today? Dr. Susan says I'm making progress, he repeated, clearly echoing what he'd been told. Emma smiled, though her heart ached. Lucas was 17, but functioned at the level of a much younger child. His recent regression worried her more than she let on to her grandmother. I'm proud of you, she told him sincerely. Later that night, after Lucas and Margaret had gone to bed, Emma reread the contract details. The offer was perfect, too perfect perhaps. In her experience, when something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. Yet the memory of Oliver's face when he'd taken that first spoonful of soup stayed with her. Maybe this time the perfect opportunity was actually real. Maybe this time her family's luck was finally changing. The Blackwell estate in Brookline sprawled across 3 acres of meticulously landscaped grounds, protected from the outside world by an imposing stone wall. Emma paused at the wrought iron gates, suddenly questioning her decision to accept Nathan's offer. After their successful picnic meeting with Oliver and 2 weeks of wrapping up at Bellamy's, today was officially her first day in this new role. You can do this, she whispered to herself as the gate swung open automatically. The private security guard nodded at her from his booth, checking her newly issued ID badge. The main house was a stunning blend of traditional New England architecture and modern design, clearly renovated to accommodate Oliver's needs. Emma noted the wheelchair ramp elegantly integrated into the front steps. Nathan met her at the door, looking more casual than she'd seen him before, in dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt. Good morning, Emma. Thank you for coming early. I thought you might want a tour before Oliver wakes up. That would be helpful, she agreed, following him inside. The interior was beautiful but practical, with wider doorways and open spaces that allowed for wheelchair access. Nathan showed her the specialized therapy room equipped with sensory tools, the adapted kitchen, and finally, Oliver's bedroom. He usually wakes around 7, Nathan explained softly, showing her the monitoring system that alerted him to his son's needs. His morning routine is the most challenging part of the day. Emma nodded, taking mental notes. Does he have a visual schedule? Many children with autism respond well to seeing their day mapped out. We tried, but he seemed to ignore it, Nathan replied. The previous therapist said he might not be visually oriented enough. Or perhaps it wasn't presented in a way that connected with him, Emma suggested. May I make some adjustments to his routine? Try some different approaches? That's why. You're here, Nathan said with a nod. I trust your instincts. The words warmed her unexpectedly. Few people had ever expressed such confidence in her abilities. Their tour continued to a separate wing of the house, where Nathan paused before an imposing set of double doors. "My mother's domain," he explained with a hint of tension in his voice. "She lives here part-time primarily to help with Oliver. She'll want to meet you." As if summoned by his words, the doors opened to reveal a striking woman in her 60s, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit despite the early hour. Her silver hair was styled in a sleek bob, and her posture radiated authority. "So this is the miracle worker," Victoria Blackwell said, her tone making the words sound less than complimentary. Her appraising gaze swept over Emma's simple outfit. "Rather young, aren't you?" "Mother, this is Emma Mitchell," Nathan introduced formally. "Emma, my mother, Victoria Blackwell." "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Blackwell," Emma said politely, extending her hand. Victoria barely touched it before withdrawing. "Nathan tells me you have experience with autism through your brother. No formal qualifications, though." "I was studying psychology before personal circumstances required me to pause my education," Emma replied evenly. Victoria's expression remained skeptical. "Well, I suppose desperation drives innovation. We've certainly tried everything." "Else with Oliver." Nathan's jaw tightened. Emma connected with Oliver in a way no one else has. "Once," Victoria emphasized. "Let's see if she can replicate that success consistently before we declare it a breakthrough." She turned to Emma with a cool smile. "I've managed my family's business interests for 40 years, Ms. Mitchell. In that time, I've learned to identify talent and opportunists. I'm still deciding which category you fall into." Before Emma could respond, a soft chime sounded from Nathan's phone. "Oliver's awake," he said, the tension with his mother instantly forgotten. "Would you like to join me for his morning routine?" "Of course," Emma replied, relieved to escape Victoria's scrutiny. As they walked away, Emma felt Victoria's gaze following them. The older woman's hostility was palpable, but Emma had dealt with difficult people before. Victoria Blackwell might be intimidating, but Emma's focus remained on Oliver. The little boy was sitting up in his specialized bed when they entered, rocking slightly and staring at the wall. He showed no recognition when his father greeted him, but Emma noticed his rocking intensified when Nathan approached too quickly. "Good morning, Oliver," Emma said softly, keeping her distance. "It's Emma. We had soup together at the restaurant, and then sandwiches at the park. I'm going to be spending more time with you now." She didn't expect a response and didn't force one, instead moving slowly to open the curtains. "It's sunny today. The light feels nice, doesn't it?" Nathan watched as Emma began a gentle morning routine, narrating her actions without demanding Oliver's attention. She helped position his wheelchair, but let Nathan handle the more intimate aspects of getting Oliver ready for the day. Throughout, she maintained a calm, predictable presence. The breakthrough came during breakfast. Instead of trying to feed Oliver immediately, Emma first showed him each item on his plate, naming them and placing them in specific positions. She then took a small bite of her own breakfast, modeling the behavior without pressure. After several minutes, Oliver reached for a piece of toast, not to eat it but to examine its texture. Emma celebrated this as a victory, and to Nathan's amazement, Oliver eventually took a small bite. "You're doing wonderfully, Oliver," Emma encouraged. "Each bite gives your body energy for the day." By the end of breakfast, Oliver had eaten more than he typically did in an entire morning. Nathan's expression was a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. "How do you do that?" he asked as they moved to the therapy room for Oliver's morning activities. "I observe and follow his lead," Emma explained, setting up a simple sensory activity. Children with autism often communicate differently, not less. Oliver was telling us what he needed. We just had to learn his language. The morning progressed smoothly until Victoria appeared in the doorway of the therapy room. Her presence seemed to instantly affect Oliver, who began rocking more intensely. "Nathan, the Tokyo investors are on the line. They won't speak to anyone but you," Victoria announced, her tone making it clear this wasn't a request. Nathan hesitated, looking at Oliver. "We're fine here," Emma assured him. "Oliver and I are just exploring some sensory activities." After Nathan left, Victoria lingered, watching Emma work with Oliver. "He seems to respond to you," she admitted grudgingly. "For now." "Children with autism often connect differently with different people," Emma replied, focusing on Oliver rather than Victoria's scrutiny. "My grandson has had 7 therapists. In the past year," Victoria stated. "Each one promised breakthroughs, each one failed. I haven't promised anything except to try my best," Emma pointed out. "Oliver will progress at his own pace." Victoria stepped closer. "Let me be direct. Ms. Mitchell, my son is a brilliant businessman but a vulnerable father. He sees hope in you, which makes him susceptible to disappointment and manipulation." Emma finally looked up, meeting Victoria's gaze directly. "I'm here to help Oliver. That's my only agenda." "Everyone has an agenda," Victoria countered. "I've investigated your background. Significant medical debts, a brother requiring expensive care, a grandmother with chronic health issues. Quite the financial burden for a young woman." The implied accusation stung, but Emma maintained her composure. "Yes, my family has medical needs. That's hardly a secret." "And suddenly a billionaire offers you a position with generous compensation and benefits," Victoria continued. "You can understand my concern." "I understand your protectiveness," Emma corrected her, "but I won't apologize for accepting a fair wage for valuable work." Their tense exchange was interrupted by Emma's phone ringing. Seeing her grandmother's number, she frowned. Margaret rarely called during the day unless something was wrong. "Excuse me, I need to take this," she said, stepping away from Oliver briefly. "Gram, is everything okay?" Victoria watched as Emma's expression shifted from concern to alarm. Even from a distance, she could hear the panic in Margaret's voice through the phone. "I'll be right there," Emma promised, ending the call and turning to Victoria with undisguised worry. "My brother has had a seizure. He's being taken to Massachusetts. General, I'm sorry, but I need to go." For a moment, Victoria's cold demeanor faltered. "Of course, family emergencies take priority. Oliver's schedule is on the table. He usually does quiet time after these activities," Emma explained hurriedly, gathering her things. "Please tell Nathan I'll call as soon as I can." As Emma rushed out, Victoria moved to the window, watching her practically run down the driveway to her car. Only when Emma was gone did Victoria turn her attention to Oliver, who had stopped his activities and was now rocking more intensely. "She'll be back." "Oliver?" Victoria said with a sigh, though whether that's good or bad remains to be seen. In the quiet room, Victoria studied her grandson's face, searching for signs of the connection Emma had seemingly established. Despite her suspicions, she couldn't deny that something had changed in Oliver these past few days. A subtle shift that both reassured and unsettled her. The question was whether Emma Mitchell was the miracle worker Nathan believed her to be, or something far more concerning, someone who had identified the Blackwell's greatest vulnerability and found a way to exploit it. The antiseptic smell of the hospital corridor made Emma's stomach clench as she hurried toward the emergency room. She found her grandmother in the waiting area, hands clutching her worn purse, face etched with worry. "Gram, where is he? What happened?" Emma asked, dropping into the chair beside her. "They've taken him for tests," Margaret explained, her voice quavering. "It was worse than before, Emma. He just collapsed during therapy, started convulsing. Dr. Susan called the ambulance immediately." Emma took her grandmother's cold hands between her own. "Has anyone spoken to you about his condition?" "The doctor mentioned something about increased intracranial pressure. They're doing scans." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "We can't afford this, Emma. The ambulance alone will cost thousands." "Don't worry about that now," Emma soothed, though the same fear gripped her heart. Their insurance was minimal, with high deductibles and limited coverage. "Let's focus on Lucas first." 3 hours later, they sat across from Dr. Patel, a neurologist who spoke with calm precision that did little to soften the gravity of his words. "The MRI shows a benign tumor pressing on his temporal lobe," he explained, pointing to the scan displayed on his computer. "This explains the seizures, which are likely to increase in frequency and severity without intervention." "What kind of intervention?" Emma asked, her mouth dry. "Surgical removal is the recommended course of action, followed by specialized medication to prevent regrowth." Dr. Patel's expression was compassionate but direct. This is a delicate procedure requiring a specialized neurosurgeon. Dr. Reeves at Boston Medical is one of the best for this type of surgery. And the cost? Margaret's question was barely audible. Dr. Patel hesitated. Given the complexity and specialized nature, even with insurance, you're looking at significant out-of-pocket expenses. Our financial services department can discuss payment plans. How much? Emma interrupted, needing the concrete number. For the surgery alone, approximately $175,000. Post-operative care and medication would be additional. The figure hit Emma like a physical blow. Even with her new salary at the Blackwell house, such an amount was impossible. When does he need the surgery? She asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. Ideally, within the next month. We can manage the seizures temporarily with medication, but the underlying issue needs to be addressed promptly. Emma nodded mechanically as the doctor continued explaining details that blurred together in her mind. One thought crystallized. With painful clarity, Lucas needed help she couldn't provide. They were allowed to see Lucas briefly before he was admitted for overnight observation. He seemed smaller somehow in the hospital bed, confused and frightened by the unfamiliar environment, and the seizures' aftermath. "Emma," he said when he saw her, relief flooding his face. "Head hurts." "I know, buddy." She stroked his hair gently. "The doctors are going to help make it better." "Want to go home?" he mumbled, eyes already drooping from the medication. "Soon," she promised, though uncertainty gnawed at her. How would they navigate this crisis? Where would they find the money for Lucas's surgery? As if summoned by her desperate thoughts, Emma's phone vibrated with a text from Nathan. "Is everything all right? How's your brother?" Emma hesitated, then typed a brief reply explaining the situation without mentioning the financial burden. Almost immediately, her phone rang. "I'm stepping outside to take this," she told her grandmother, moving to a quiet corner of the hallway. "Hello?" "Emma, I'm so sorry about your brother." Nathan's voice was warm with genuine concern. "Is there anything I can do to help?" The question unleashed a flood of emotion Emma had been desperately suppressing. "They found a tumor," she managed, her voice breaking. "He needs surgery, but the cost is—" She trailed off, unwilling to burden Nathan with her problems. "Tell me what he needs," Nathan said without hesitation. "It's not your responsibility," Emma protested weakly. "The Blackwell Foundation funds medical treatments for children with neurological conditions," Nathan explained. "We could include Lucas in our program." The offer was so unexpected, so desperately needed, that Emma couldn't immediately process it. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll let us help," Nathan replied simply. "Where is he now, Massachusetts General?" "I can have our foundation director contact them immediately about coverage." "Why would you do this?" Emma asked, unable to keep the question inside. There was a brief pause before Nathan answered. "Because I can, and because in just 1 week, you've given Oliver more progress than he's had in months. Consider it an investment in both our family's well-being." The conversation continued with Nathan taking down details and promising to make arrangements immediately. By the time Emma returned to Lucas's room, a weight had lifted from her shoulders, replaced by a confusing mixture of gratitude and unease about accepting such significant help. She didn't share the full details with Margaret yet, wanting to wait until everything was confirmed. "Nathan offered some help through his foundation," she said vaguely. "For now, let's just focus on getting Lucas comfortable." The next morning, Emma arrived at the Blackwell estate earlier than usual, determined to thank Nathan properly and discuss the foundation's offer. To her surprise, Victoria opened the door instead of the usual housekeeper. "Miss Mitchell, I wasn't certain you'd return today, given your family situation." Victoria's tone made it impossible to determine if this was criticism or concern. "My grandmother is with Lucas at the hospital. I didn't want to disrupt Oliver's routine any more than necessary," Emma explained, following Victoria into the house. "Nathan mentioned he's arranged for your brother to receive treatment through our foundation," Victoria remarked, leading Emma to the kitchen where coffee was brewing. "Quite generous considering your brief tenure with us." There was a question beneath the statement that Emma chose to address directly. "I didn't ask for his help, Mrs. Blackwell. He offered it." "Of course." Victoria poured 2 cups of coffee, handing one to Emma. "My son has always had a compassionate nature, especially when it comes to attractive young women in distress." Emma felt her cheeks flush with anger, but maintained her composure. "I'm grateful for the Foundation's assistance, but I'm here because of my commitment to Oliver. If you have concerns about my professionalism, we should discuss them openly." Victoria's eyebrows rose slightly at Emma's directness. "Very well. I find the timing suspicious. You enter our lives, establish yourself as indispensable to Oliver, and suddenly require expensive medical treatment for your brother that only we can provide. It follows a pattern I've seen before." "What pattern?" Emma asked, genuinely confused. "Nathan's late wife was similarly resourceful." Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. She recognized his generous nature as an exploitable weakness. "I'm sorry if that was your experience," Emma replied carefully, "but I'm not your daughter-in-law, and my brother's medical condition isn't a manipulation tactic." "Perhaps not," Victoria conceded, "but you must understand my concern. The Blackwell Foundation has limited resources, despite our family's wealth. Every case we fund means another must wait. Nathan prioritizing your brother after knowing you barely 2 weeks raises questions." Before Emma could respond, Victoria reached into a drawer and removed an envelope, sliding it across the counter. "Which brings me to a proposition." Emma stared at the envelope without touching it. "What is this?" "A solution that benefits everyone," Victoria explained coolly. "That envelope contains a check for $250,000, enough to cover your brother's surgery, aftercare, and establish a trust for his ongoing needs. In exchange, you would tender your resignation and agree to no further contact with the Blackwell family." The offer was so shocking that Emma could only stare in disbelief. "You want to pay me to leave?" "I want to protect my family from potential exploitation while ensuring your brother receives the care he needs," Victoria corrected. "A clean separation now, before Oliver becomes too attached, is kinder to everyone involved." Emma's hand trembled as she pushed the envelope back across the counter. "I don't want your money, Mrs. Blackwell. Not like this." "Everyone has a price, Ms. Mitchell," Victoria insisted. "Yours is simply higher than I anticipated." "My brother's health is not a negotiating point," Emma said, rising from her seat. "And neither is my integrity. Now, if you'll excuse me, Oliver will be expecting me for his morning routine." She turned to leave, but Victoria's voice stopped her. "Consider carefully before rejecting my offer, Ms. Mitchell. Surgical slots are limited. Paperwork gets delayed. The Foundation's approval process is complex. Without my support, Nathan's promises may prove difficult to fulfill." The thinly veiled threat sent a chill through Emma. "Are you suggesting you'd block medical care for a child to get what you want?" "I'm suggesting that business decisions require objectivity," Victoria replied smoothly. "Sentiment clouds judgment. Nathan is currently operating on sentiment. And you're operating on suspicion without evidence," Emma countered. "If you're so concerned about my motives, investigate me. You'll find nothing but a woman trying to care for her family while doing work she believes in." Victoria's expression sharpened with interest. "An investigation? What an excellent suggestion." The conversation was interrupted by Nathan's arrival. He entered the kitchen with a smile that faltered when he sensed the tension between the 2 women. "Is everything all right?" he asked, looking from his mother to Emma. "Perfectly fine," Victoria replied, smoothly retrieving the envelope and returning it to the drawer. "Ms. Mitchell and I were just discussing family priorities. I'll leave you 2 to your day." With a meaningful glance at Emma, she exited the kitchen. "How's your brother?" Nathan asked once they were alone. "Stable for now," Emma replied, trying to shake off the disturbing conversation with Victoria. "Nathan, about the Foundation's help." "Already in motion," he assured her. "Dr. Reeves has agreed to perform the surgery, and our foundation will cover all expenses. You don't need to worry about anything except being there for Lucas." Relief and gratitude washed over Emma, momentarily displacing her concerns about Victoria's threats. "I don't know how to thank you." Nathan's expression softened. "You thank me every day by helping my son. Now shall we see what Oliver is up to this morning?" As they walked toward Oliver's room, Emma couldn't shake Victoria's words from her mind. The matriarch clearly considered her a threat, one significant enough to warrant a substantial bribe, and now apparently an investigation. Whatever Victoria discovered, Emma knew her conscience was clear. Her motives were genuine, her care for Oliver sincere. Yet something told her that Victoria Blackwell wasn't a woman who easily admitted defeat or one who played by conventional rules when protecting what she considered hers. The Blackwell Foundation's annual gala transformed the Boston Museum of Fine Arts into a glittering showcase of wealth and philanthropy. Under crystal chandeliers, Boston's elite mingled in designer formal wear, checkbooks metaphorically open to support the foundation's work with neurologically diverse children. Emma felt profoundly out of place despite the borrowed designer dress Nathan had arranged for her. After 6 weeks working with Oliver, she had made remarkable progress with him. Enough that Nathan had insisted she attend tonight's event as part of the therapeutic team being honored. "You look beautiful," Nathan murmured as they entered the grand hall. In his perfectly tailored tuxedo, he was devastatingly handsome, drawing admiring glances from the women they passed. "I feel like an imposter," Emma admitted, adjusting the unfamiliar weight of diamond earrings the stylist had selected. "Everyone here is so overprivileged," Nathan supplied with a wry smile. "Remember, you're the one doing the real work. They're just writing checks." His easy compliment warmed her, as did his protective presence beside her. Over the past weeks, their professional relationship had developed an undercurrent of something deeper, unacknowledged but increasingly difficult to ignore. Lucas's surgery was scheduled for the following week, with Dr. Reeves personally overseeing his case. The foundation had not only covered the medical expenses, but also arranged for specialized post-operative care that far exceeded what Emma could have provided on her own. For that alone, she would be eternally grateful to Nathan. Victoria Blackwell presided over the gala like a queen holding court. Elegant in midnight blue, she circulated among Boston's wealthiest citizens with practiced charm, securing donations with subtle persuasion. When her gaze fell on Emma and Nathan entering together, her smile tightened imperceptibly. "Nathan, darling," Victoria approached, air-kissing her son's cheek. "Senator Hollingsworth was just asking about the new pediatric initiative. You should join us." Her eyes flickered to Emma. "Ms. Mitchell, you look appropriate. How nice that you could attend." "Mother, Emma is here as our guest of honor," Nathan reminded her firmly. "The progress she's made with Oliver is exactly what this foundation celebrates." "Of course," Victoria agreed smoothly, "though perhaps we should let our actual medical professionals explain the therapeutic approaches. Dr. Lancaster is preparing his remarks now." "Emma will speak about her work with Oliver," Nathan insisted. "No one understands his needs better." Victoria's expression remained pleasant, but Emma sensed the growing tension between mother and son. For weeks, Victoria had maintained a cool civility toward Emma, while clearly continuing her behind-the-scenes investigation. Twice Emma had noticed unfamiliar cars parked near her grandmother's apartment. Once, a survey researcher had asked Margaret detailed questions about Emma's employment history. "As you wish," Victoria conceded. "The presentation begins in 30 minutes. I've scheduled you to speak first, Nathan, followed by Dr. Lancaster, and then Ms. Mitchell." As Victoria glided away to greet other guests, Emma released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "She still doesn't approve of me." "My mother rarely approves of anything she didn't personally arrange," Nathan replied, guiding Emma toward the bar. "Don't let her intimidate you. Tonight is about celebrating Oliver's progress that wouldn't have happened without you." The evening progressed with elegant precision, cocktails followed by dinner at assigned tables, then the formal presentation about the foundation's work. Emma sat at the head table with Nathan, Victoria, and several board members, feeling increasingly nervous about her upcoming speech. Nathan's presentation was polished and heartfelt, focusing on the Foundation's mission to support innovative therapies for children with complex neurological conditions. The audience responded with generous applause and open checkbooks. Dr. Lancaster followed with clinical explanations of various therapeutic approaches, highlighting success stories from the Foundation's work. As he concluded, Victoria took the podium to introduce the final speaker. "And now," Victoria announced, her voice warm with practiced sincerity, "we have a special presentation from one of our newer therapeutic associates, who has been working with my grandson Oliver. Please welcome Emma Mitchell." The applause was polite as Emma approached the podium. Looking out at the sea of expectant faces, she momentarily froze, then caught Nathan's encouraging smile from the front table. Drawing a deep breath, she began describing her work with Oliver. The small breakthroughs, the patient building of trust, the personalized approach that respected his unique perception of the world. The audience seemed genuinely engaged, nodding, as she explained how traditional therapies sometimes failed children with complex needs, while tailored, respectful approaches often succeeded. Emma felt herself relaxing into the presentation, her passion for helping Oliver overcoming her nervousness. "Oliver doesn't need to be fixed," she concluded. "He needs to be understood. Every child deserves that basic dignity, regardless of neurological differences or physical limitations. Thank you for supporting work that honors that principle." The applause was warmer now, with several audience members rising to their feet. Nathan beamed with obvious pride, and for a moment, Emma allowed herself to feel she belonged in this world of influence and impact. That moment shattered when Victoria smoothly reclaimed the podium. "Thank you, Ms. Mitchell, for that heartfelt perspective from someone relatively new to our therapeutic community. Before we continue with our fundraising appeal, I'd like to share some additional context about our Foundation's commitment to professionalism and integrity in all our programs." Emma returned to her seat, a sense of unease growing as Victoria continued. "The Blackwell Foundation prides itself on rigorous standards. We employ only the most qualified individuals and subject them to thorough background checks to ensure the vulnerable children in our care receive the highest quality support." Victoria's gaze swept the room, lingering briefly on Emma. "Unfortunately, in our field, we occasionally encounter individuals who exploit the compassion of families dealing with disability. Individuals who use emotional manipulation rather than professional qualifications to gain positions of trust." A murmur rippled through the audience. Nathan straightened in his chair, his expression darkening. "Recent events have reminded us of the importance of maintaining these standards," Victoria continued. "When desperate families seek help for their children, they can be vulnerable to those who offer easy solutions without proper credentials, or those who may have hidden agendas." Emma felt the blood drain from her face as Victoria's meaning became horrifyingly clear. This wasn't a general statement about Foundation policy. It was a public character assassination. "Mother," Nathan said in a low, warning tone that carried in the suddenly quiet room, "that's enough." Victoria ignored him, her smile never wavering. "As board chairwoman, I believe in transparency, which is why I must inform our supporters that we recently discovered concerning information about one of our temporary hires, information about financial motivations, questionable past employment terminations, and potential willingness to subject vulnerable individuals to experimental treatments for financial gain." The room had gone completely silent. Emma sat frozen, humiliation burning through her as hundreds of eyes turned in her direction. Nathan was half rising from his chair when Victoria delivered her final blow. "I've prepared a brief document summarizing these concerns for our board members to review. While I believe in second chances, I also believe in protecting our Foundation's reputation and, most importantly, the children we serve." With practiced grace, Victoria distributed folders to the board members seated at the head table. Emma caught glimpses of what appeared to be financial records, medical bills, and what looked disturbingly like transcripts of private conversations. "This is outrageous," Nathan said, loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. He refused to take the folder Victoria attempted to hand him. "It's factual information gathered through standard due diligence," Victoria replied calmly. "Information you would have discovered yourself had you conducted proper vetting instead of making emotional decisions." Emma couldn't bear another moment of the horrified stares and whispered comments. Rising from her chair, she managed to say with dignity, "Excuse me," before walking as steadily as she could toward the exit. Behind her, she heard Nathan's chair scrape back, followed by Victoria's smooth voice resuming the fundraising appeal, as if nothing untoward had occurred. In the museum's ornate lobby, Emma pressed her back against a marble column, struggling to breathe through the panic and humiliation. The things Victoria had implied, financial manipulation, professional misconduct, exploiting vulnerable children, were grotesque distortions of her desperate attempts to help her brother while building a career in therapeutic care. "Emma!" Nathan's voice echoed through the lobby as he searched for her. "Emma, please wait." She stepped out from behind the column, dignity barely intact. "I need to leave. Now." "I'm coming with you," Nathan insisted, his face flushed with anger. "What my mother did was unconscionable. I had no idea she was planning this ambush." "What was in those folders?" Emma asked, her voice barely audible. Nathan ran a hand through his hair. "Distorted truths, medical bills for Lucas, records of your dismissal from an internship program, without context that you were reporting sexual harassment. Notes suggesting you considered enrolling Lucas in a clinical trial that offered financial compensation." Each revelation felt like another blow. "She hired investigators to dig through my life." "I'm so sorry," Nathan said, reaching for her hand. "None of this changes what I know about you, what I've seen in your work with Oliver." A museum security guard approached them discreetly. "Mr. Blackwell, Mrs. Blackwell asked me to inform you that your presence is required for the major donation announcements." Nathan waved him away impatiently. "Tell her I'm dealing with a more urgent matter." "Please go back," Emma said, pulling her hand from his. "You need to salvage this fundraiser for the foundation. For the children, it helps." "Not at the expense of your dignity," Nathan protested. "My dignity is my concern," Emma replied, summoning strength she didn't know she possessed. "Right now, I just need to get away from here." She glanced down at the borrowed jewelry and designer dress. "I'll return these tomorrow." "Emma, please." "I'll come by in the morning to say goodbye to Oliver," she continued, her decision crystallizing. "I'll help transition him to a new therapist, but I can't continue working for your family." "Don't let her win," Nathan urged. "Don't let her drive you away from Oliver, from the progress you've made together." Emma's eyes filled with tears she refused to shed. "This isn't about winning or losing. It's about what's best for everyone involved. Oliver needs consistency and calm, not an environment filled with tension and suspicion." Before Nathan could respond, the security guard returned, more insistent this time. "Mr. Blackwell, your mother says it's urgent. The senator is waiting to present his donation." "Go," Emma said firmly. "Your foundation needs you right now. I'll be fine." Nathan hesitated, torn between obligations, then leaned forward and pressed a quick, unexpected kiss to her forehead. "This isn't over. We'll talk tomorrow." As he reluctantly returned to the gala, Emma slipped out the museum's side entrance. The cool night air felt cleansing against her flushed skin. She'd arrived in Nathan's car, but leaving alone felt imperative now. She ordered a rideshare, sinking onto a stone bench to wait, finally allowing the tears to fall. Tomorrow she would face the painful task of saying goodbye to Oliver, who had made such remarkable progress in their time together. She would explain her resignation to Nathan, maintaining whatever dignity Victoria had left her. And then she would focus entirely on Lucas's upcoming surgery and recovery, grateful at least that the Foundation's support for his medical care seemed secure. As her ride arrived, Emma took one last look at the glittering museum windows, the silhouettes of wealthy donors raising champagne glasses in celebration of their generosity. Inside that beautiful bubble, Victoria Blackwell had effectively destroyed her professional reputation in Boston's therapeutic community. The carefully crafted insinuations would follow her, making future employment difficult. Yet, as painful as Victoria's public humiliation had been, Emma's deepest ache came from a different loss entirely. The connection she'd begun to feel with Nathan, and the tentative hope that it might grow into something more. Whatever had been developing between them couldn't survive this level of family opposition and public scandal. Some dreams, Emma reflected as the car pulled away from the curb, weren't meant to be realized. Some worlds would always remain separated, by more than just wealth and privilege, by the fundamental power to control narratives and shape reputations. The monotonous beeping of hospital monitors had become the soundtrack of Emma's life over the past 72 hours. She sat beside Lucas's bed in the neurosurgical recovery unit, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest as he slept. The surgery had been successful, Dr. Reeves had removed the entire tumor with minimal impact to surrounding tissue, but the recovery would be long and uncertain. Margaret dozed in a chair opposite Emma, exhaustion finally overcoming her worry. The private room provided by the Blackwell Foundation offered comforts most patients could only dream of: a dedicated nurse, a pull-out sofa for family, even meal delivery from the hospital's executive dining service. These luxuries came with the bitter knowledge that they were Nathan's doing, arranged before Emma's resignation 3 days earlier. Though she had tried to decline, the reality was that Lucas needed this level of care, and her pride wasn't worth jeopardizing his recovery. The memory of her last day at the Blackwell house remained painfully fresh. Oliver had sensed her distress immediately, becoming agitated and refusing his breakfast. Despite Emma's attempts to maintain normalcy, her impending departure had somehow penetrated his understanding, triggering the first meltdown he'd had in weeks. Nathan had been equally devastated, though he expressed it differently, with quiet intensity and increasingly desperate attempts to convince her to stay. "Victoria will apologize," he had promised. "I'll make it a condition of her continued involvement with the foundation." "A forced apology solves nothing," Emma had replied, gathering her few belongings from Oliver's therapy room. "Your mother believes I'm an opportunist who manipulated her vulnerable son and grandson. That perception won't change because you demand it." "Then I'll remove her from the foundation entirely," Nathan had countered, his voice hardening. "She crossed a line, Emma. Using her position to publicly humiliate you was unconscionable." Emma had paused, struck by the determination in his voice. "She's your mother, Nathan, and Oliver's grandmother. Cutting her out of your lives would cause more harm than good." "What about the harm she's caused you?" he demanded. "Your professional reputation." "Is something I'll rebuild elsewhere," Emma had finished for him. "There are other cities, other opportunities." The finality of her words had visibly shaken him. "You're leaving Boston?" "After Lucas recovers," she'd confirmed. "There's nothing for me here anymore." Nathan had moved closer then, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. Nothing? The question had hung between them, laden with unspoken feelings neither had dared acknowledge directly. For a moment, Emma had allowed herself to imagine a different outcome, one where social divides and family disapproval didn't create insurmountable barriers. "You know it wouldn't work," she'd said softly. "Your world and mine are too different." "That's my mother talking," Nathan had replied, his hand tentatively reaching for hers. "Not you." Before Emma could respond, Oliver had entered the room in his wheelchair, pushed by his regular nurse. Seeing Emma with her bag packed, he had begun rocking violently, making the distressed sounds that once had been his primary mode of communication. Emma had immediately dropped to his level, speaking calmly despite her breaking heart. "Oliver, I need to go help my brother now. He's sick like you were when we first met. Remember how we talked about different feelings? I'm feeling sad to leave, but I'm also feeling hopeful that you'll continue all your amazing progress." Oliver had stopped rocking, his gaze fixed on a point just past Emma's shoulder, his version of listening intently. "You've taught me so much," Emma had continued, fighting tears, "about patience and different ways of seeing the world. I won't forget you, Oliver." To everyone's astonishment, Oliver had slowly raised his hand to touch Emma's cheek, a gesture of affection he had never before initiated with anyone. The moment had been simultaneously triumphant and devastating, proof of their connection and what was being lost. Emma had left shortly after, the goodbye with Nathan brief and formal in front of the staff. Only the intensity in his eyes had betrayed deeper emotions as he promised, "This isn't the end, Emma. When Lucas is recovered, we'll talk again." Now 3 days later in the quiet hospital room, those words seemed like a fantasy from another life. Emma massaged her temples, fighting a headache born of stress and sleep deprivation. Lucas had shown positive signs today, recognizing her, speaking a few words, even smiling briefly, but remained mostly sedated to manage post-operative pain. A light knock on the door broke her reverie. Expecting a nurse, Emma called softly, "Come in." The door opened to reveal Nathan, looking uncharacteristically disheveled in jeans and an untucked shirt, dark circles under his eyes, suggesting he'd been sleeping as poorly as she had. "Nathan," Emma whispered, stunned by his appearance, "what are you doing here?" "I needed to see you," he replied simply. "How's Lucas?" "Stable. Improving." Emma glanced at her grandmother, still sleeping soundly. "Let's talk in the hallway." In the corridor's harsh fluorescent lighting, Nathan looked even more exhausted up close. "You look terrible," Emma observed, momentarily forgetting her resolve to maintain emotional distance. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "You should see the other guy." When Emma raised a questioning eyebrow, he elaborated, "Oliver has been challenging since you left. 3 meltdowns yesterday alone. He's rejecting food again." Guilt flooded Emma. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted him to regress." "It's not your fault," Nathan said firmly, which is exactly what I told the foundation board when I explained why I was removing my mother from her position. Emma stared at him in shock. "You didn't." "I did." His expression was grim but determined. "The emergency board meeting lasted 5 hours. Victoria fought it, of course, but the evidence of her behavior was indefensible. She used foundation resources for a personal vendetta, manipulated confidential information, and deliberately undermined a therapeutic relationship that was benefiting Oliver." "Nathan, she's your mother," Emma protested weakly. "Yes, and I love her," he acknowledged. "But I won't allow her to destroy what matters most to me, Oliver's well-being, the foundation's integrity, and—" He hesitated, then finished softly, "You." The declaration hung between them, too direct to ignore. Emma leaned against the wall for support, overwhelmed by his words and the intensity behind them. "Victoria was partially right about one thing," Nathan continued. "I did make an emotional decision when I hired you. I saw how Oliver responded to you and acted on instinct rather than protocol, but she was wrong about your motivations and your value." He stepped closer. "Emma, the foundation needs you. Oliver needs you, and I—" "Mr. Blackwell?" A nurse approached from the nurses' station. "Dr. Reeves asked me to inform you that he's available now if you'd like to discuss Lucas Mitchell's case." Emma looked at Nathan in confusion. "You're meeting with Dr. Reeves? Why?" Nathan held her gaze steadily. "Because I'm implementing a new foundation initiative, specialized support for siblings of our program participants. Lucas will be the first recipient." "What does that mean exactly?" Emma asked, her defenses rising despite his evident sincerity. "It means comprehensive rehabilitation services, specialized medications not covered by standard insurance, and placement in an innovative recovery program once he's stabilized." Nathan's expression softened. "No strings attached, Emma. Whether or not you return to work with Oliver, this isn't about leveraging your brother's health. It's about doing what's right." Before Emma could process this information, Dr. Reeves himself approached, tablet in hand. "Mr. Blackwell, Ms. Mitchell, I have excellent news regarding Lucas's latest scans." The next 30 minutes passed in a blur of medical terminology and recovery plans. Dr. Reeves explained that Lucas was an ideal candidate for an experimental neural rehabilitation therapy, one typically inaccessible due to cost, but fully covered under the Foundation's new program. "With this protocol, we expect significant improvement in his cognitive function and a substantial reduction in seizure activity," Dr. Reeves concluded. "The Foundation's commitment to cover 2 years of treatment is extraordinary." When the doctor departed, Emma turned to Nathan, emotion overwhelming her carefully constructed barriers. "Why are you doing all this?" "Because I can," he answered, echoing his words from weeks ago, "and because—" He hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "Emma, I've been thinking about what you said, about our worlds being too different. You were right, but not in the way you meant." "What do you mean?" Your world is one of genuine compassion and practical care, qualities my privileged existence often lacks. You see people for who they are, not what they can offer. His voice roughened with emotion. You saw Oliver, really saw him, when everyone else saw only his limitations. You saw me as a father, not a billionaire, and I've come to see you as essential. Emma's heart pounded as Nathan continued, I'm not asking you to return to your job. I'm asking for the chance to explore what's developing between us without my mother's interference or the complications of an employer-employee relationship. And, Oliver? Emma asked, her practical concerns breaking through the emotional fog. He needs consistency, not confusion about my role. I've restructured the Foundation's therapeutic approach, Nathan explained. I'd like you to develop and oversee a new center for innovative therapy, not as an employee, but as an independent contractor with complete professional autonomy. Your methods would benefit dozens of children, including Oliver. The offer was breathtaking in its scope and consideration. It addressed her concerns about professional integrity while providing a framework for whatever personal relationship might develop between them. This center, it would be separate from your company, from your family's direct control? Emma asked cautiously. Completely independent with secured funding for 5 years minimum, your name on the door, your therapeutic philosophy throughout. Nathan smiled slightly. Though I hope you might allow occasional visits from a certain CEO and his son. The hope in his eyes mirrored the fragile optimism growing in Emma's heart. Before she could respond, the hospital room door opened and Margaret emerged, blinking in surprise at finding them in intense conversation. Nathan, she said, recognizing him from his previous visits. Is everything all right? Everything's fine. Graham, Emma assured her. Nathan was just sharing some ideas about Lucas's recovery. Margaret looked between them knowingly. Ideas, Well, don't let me interrupt your ideas. I'm going to find some coffee. As Margaret disappeared down the hallway, Emma and Nathan shared a moment of unexpected laughter that broke the last of the tension between them. I should check on Lucas, Emma said, though she made no move toward the door. And I should let you rest, Nathan replied, equally stationary. They stood in charged silence until Emma finally asked the question that had been burning in her mind. What about Victoria? Will she accept any of this? Nathan's expression grew serious. She'll have to. I love my mother, but I've enabled her controlling behavior for too long, with the company, with Oliver, with my personal life. That ends now. People don't change overnight, Nathan. No, he agreed. But relationships can change when boundaries are established. Victoria will always be Oliver's grandmother and my mother, but she'll no longer dictate our lives. He reached for Emma's hand, his touch sending warmth through her tired body. The question is, are you willing to give us a chance despite everything that's happened? Emma looked at their joined hands, his manicured and unblemished, hers showing the small calluses and tiny scars of a more physically demanding life. Different worlds indeed, yet somehow they fit together perfectly. I need time, she said honestly. Lucas's recovery comes first, and when, I return to work. With Oliver, we'd need to be careful about how we approach any personal relationship. I understand, Nathan said, though disappointment flickered in his eyes. But, Emma continued, squeezing his hand gently, I'm not saying no. I'm saying, not yet. The smile that transformed Nathan's face was worth every moment of uncertainty. Not yet is infinitely better than never, he said. And I'm very good at being patient when something matters. As if to prove his words, he raised her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles before releasing her. Take all the time you need with Lucas. The foundation paperwork for the new center is ready whenever you are, and I'll be waiting however long it takes. He stepped back, maintaining eye contact as he added softly, Oliver misses you. When you're ready to see him, no pressure, no expectations, just let me know. I miss him too, Emma admitted. More than I expected. That's how it begins, Nathan said cryptically. At Emma's questioning look, he elaborated. Families, they begin with missing someone so much that being apart feels wrong. The word families hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility. Neither acknowledged it directly, but as Nathan finally turned to leave, the promise of it remained. A future neither had imagined before a chance encounter in a restaurant changed everything. 1 year later, the Mitchell-Blackwell Therapeutic Center for Neurological Diversity stood on a sun-drenched corner of Boston's medical district, its modern architecture softened by gardens and play spaces designed for children with varying mobility needs. On this particular Saturday morning, the center was closed to regular clients, its facilities reserved for a more personal celebration. Emma surveyed the space from the doorway of her office, marveling at how much had changed in a year. The center had grown from a concept in Nathan's proposal to a thriving reality that now served over 70 families, with a waiting list that spoke to the desperate need for their approach. "Everything looks perfect," Margaret said, joining. Emma with Lucas following close behind. At 18, Lucas stood taller than both of them, his recovery from surgery having triggered an unexpected growth spurt, along with remarkable cognitive improvements. "Are you nervous?" Lucas asked, his speech clear and confident, another post-surgery gift that still sometimes surprised them. Emma smiled at her brother. "A little. It's a big day." "Nathan's more nervous than you are," Lucas informed her with the direct honesty that remained his trademark. "He's changed his tie 3 times, Oliver told me." The mention of Oliver warmed Emma's heart. The bond between Lucas and Oliver had developed gradually over the past year, as Lucas had discovered a natural talent for connecting with neurologically diverse children. Now in his first semester at Boston University studying occupational therapy, Lucas volunteered at the center twice weekly, with Oliver being his most enthusiastic participant. "I should check on the setup in the garden," Emma said, smoothing her simple cream dress, elegant but practical, like everything in her life now. The garden had been transformed for today's event. White chairs faced a floral archway, while adaptations for Oliver and other wheelchair users had been seamlessly integrated into the design. Nothing about this celebration would be conventional, which suited everyone involved perfectly. As Emma adjusted a flower arrangement, she spotted Victoria Blackwell entering through the side gate, impeccably dressed as always, but somehow softened around the edges. Their relationship had evolved from open hostility to a wary respect that occasionally hinted at something warmer. "Emma," Victoria greeted her with a polite nod. "The arrangements look lovely." "Thank you for handling the catering," Emma replied, equally polite. Everything arrived on schedule. An awkward silence fell between them until Victoria sighed, visibly setting aside her pride. "I've been thinking about what Nathan said, about today being a new beginning for all of us." Emma waited, having learned that Victoria required space to approach emotional topics in her own time. "I was wrong about you," Victoria finally admitted. "Not entirely wrong to be cautious, a mother's prerogative, but wrong about your character and intentions." Coming from Victoria, this qualified as a profound apology. Emma nodded her acceptance. "We both want the same thing. What's best for Oliver and Nathan." "Yes," Victoria agreed. "Though we've had different ideas about what that looks like." She glanced toward the center's entrance where guests were beginning to arrive. "I should help with the seating." Oliver was very specific about the arrangement. As Victoria moved away, Emma felt a presence behind her and turned to find Nathan watching her with a tender expression. In his tailored suit, with his hair slightly tousled by the spring breeze, he took her breath away just as he had that first day in the restaurant. "Having second thoughts?" he asked softly, coming to stand beside her. Emma shook her head. "Just reflecting on how we got here. It hasn't exactly been a straight path." Nathan laughed. "No one would call anything about our journey straightforward." He reached for her hand, his thumb brushing over the elegant engagement ring she still wasn't quite used to wearing. "But we arrived at the right destination." The past year had unfolded in careful stages. First, Emma's return to therapeutic work with Oliver, this time as an independent contractor developing the center's programs. Then cautious personal encounters outside of work, coffee, walks in the park with Oliver, eventually dinners alone that stretched into hours of conversation. Their first kiss had come 3 months in, on a rain-soaked evening after a fundraising event for the center went spectacularly well. Victoria's acceptance had evolved even more gradually. The turning point came 6 months ago, when Oliver contracted pneumonia and spent a week in the hospital. Emma had remained at his bedside alongside Nathan, developing specialized techniques to keep Oliver calm during painful procedures. Victoria, witnessing Emma's genuine devotion to her grandson's well-being, had finally acknowledged what Nathan had seen all along. "It's almost time," Nathan said, interrupting Emma's reflections. "Oliver's ready whenever you are." The ceremony began with soft music, played by a string quartet as guests settled into their seats. Unlike traditional weddings, this celebration followed a carefully choreographed schedule designed around Oliver's comfort level, with built-in breaks and quiet spaces available if needed. Nathan took his place beneath the floral arch, with Lucas standing proudly beside him as best man. The traditional wedding march was replaced by Oliver's favorite classical piece as he navigated his wheelchair down the aisle, beaming with importance as he carried the rings on a special tray attached to his chair. A collective murmur of appreciation rose from the guests as Oliver executed his role perfectly, having practiced for weeks with determined focus. He positioned himself precisely where Emma had marked the ground with a subtle blue dot, his favorite color and their private signal. When Emma appeared at the garden entrance on Margaret's arm, Nathan's expression of pure joy made every struggle worthwhile. She walked slowly toward him, maintaining eye contact, anchoring herself in the certainty of their connection despite the audience watching them. The minister, specially selected for his experience with inclusive ceremonies, welcomed everyone with warmth and humor. "We gather today to celebrate not just the union of Emma and Nathan, but the blending of families, the bridging of differences, and the triumph of understanding over prejudice." The vows they had written together emphasized partnership, respect, and their shared commitment to creating a world that valued neurological diversity. When Nathan spoke of how Emma had taught him to truly see his son, there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. "I promise to continue learning from you," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "To value your perspective, to support your dreams, and to remember always that our different backgrounds are our greatest strength, not our limitation." Emma's vows acknowledged the unconventional nature of their relationship. "I promise to navigate our two worlds with grace and authenticity, to build bridges rather than walls, and to never forget that it was Oliver who brought us together, teaching us both that connection transcends all barriers." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Oliver initiated the applause, rocking happily in his wheelchair as Nathan and Emma sealed their vows with a kiss that balanced dignity with genuine passion. The reception that followed was equally unconventional, with sensory-friendly spaces, food options for various dietary needs, and activities that engaged guests of all abilities. Victoria, to everyone's surprise, had personally overseen these inclusive details, working closely with Emma to ensure every guest felt welcome. As the celebration continued, Emma found a quiet moment with Nathan on the center's rooftop garden. Boston's skyline provided a glittering backdrop as twilight descended over the city. "Mrs. Blackwell," Nathan murmured, pulling her close. "How does it feel?" "Surreal," Emma admitted. "A year ago I was saying goodbye to you in a hospital corridor, convinced we had no future together. And now?" he prompted, his arms tightening around her waist. "Now I know better than to underestimate what's possible when people choose understanding over judgment." She leaned into his embrace, savoring the security of it. "Though I'm keeping Mitchell Blackwell as my professional name, the center needs that continuity." "I wouldn't have it any other way," Nathan assured her. "Your independence and professional identity are non-negotiable. That was in my vows, if you recall." Emma smiled. "Right after the part about always keeping the refrigerator stocked with my favorite yogurt." "The most sacred of promises," Nathan agreed solemnly, then grew serious. "Have you told Lucas about the expansion plans yet?" Emma shook her head. "I'm waiting for the right moment. The idea of heading our adolescent program might be overwhelming for him right now." "He'll be brilliant at it," Nathan said with conviction. The way he connects with our older clients is remarkable. That's something that can't be taught. Like how you instinctively knew to trust a waitress with your son? Emma teased gently. Nathan's expression softened. Best decision I ever made, even if we took the scenic route afterward. A staff member appeared at the rooftop entrance. Excuse me, but Oliver is asking for both of you. It's time for the cake and he's very excited about the blue frosting. They followed her downstairs hand in hand, rejoining their guests where Oliver waited impatiently by the elaborate cake, designed with his input to feature multiple textures and his favorite colors. Victoria approached them, champagne flute in hand. I've been cornered by 3 different neurologists who want to collaborate with the center, she informed Emma. I took the liberty of scheduling preliminary meetings for next month. Thank you, Emma replied, genuinely appreciative of Victoria's business acumen, which had proven unexpectedly valuable to the center's growth. We could use the additional expertise for the new sensory integration program. Victoria nodded, then hesitated before adding, I've also been thinking about your proposal to convert part of the Blackwell summer house for family retreats. It makes practical sense, and the waterfront location would be therapeutic. Nathan exchanged a surprised glance with Emma. The summer house had been Victoria's personal sanctuary for decades, and her willingness to share it represented a significant concession. That's very generous, Mother, Nathan said carefully. Yes, well? Victoria straightened her already perfect posture. Families should support each other's work, even when they don't always agree on methods. It was as close to a blessing as Victoria would likely ever give, and Emma accepted it with a gracious nod. We'll discuss the details after the honeymoon. Of course. Victoria's gaze softened as she looked past them to where Oliver was demonstrating something to Lucas with animated gestures. He's thriving, both of them are. The 3 adults watched the young men interact. Lucas patient and attentive, Oliver increasingly communicative in his unique way. What had begun as therapeutic sessions had evolved into a genuine friendship that benefited them both. Time for cake, Oliver announced with unusual clarity, his excitement momentarily overcoming his speech challenges. As they gathered around the cake, Emma felt Nathan's arm slip around her waist, anchoring her in this moment of perfect belonging. 1 year, she had been a waitress struggling to support her family, crossing paths with a desperate father and his special son. Now she stood at the center of a blended family and a revolutionary therapeutic approach that was changing lives beyond their own. The journey hadn't been smooth or predictable, much like the neurologically diverse individuals they served. It had followed its own unique path, with unexpected challenges and equally unexpected joys. But as Emma looked around at the faces of those she loved, Nathan's strength, Oliver's determination, Lucas's compassion, even Victoria's grudging acceptance, she knew with absolute certainty that they had all ended up exactly where they were meant to be. Oliver grinned up at them from his wheelchair, face alight with happiness as everyone sang. In that moment of perfect connection, Emma remembered the restaurant scene that had started everything. A father frozen in disbelief as his son accepted help from a stranger. That moment of impossible connection had blossomed into something none of them could have imagined. A family united not by convention, but by choice. A therapeutic center born from personal experience rather than abstract theory, and a love that had overcome every barrier placed in its path. Nathan squeezed her hand, somehow reading her thoughts as he often did now. From frozen in disbelief to here, he whispered. Quite a journey. Just the beginning, Emma replied as Oliver successfully blew out his candles with help from Lucas. Just the beginning indeed, of a family defined not by matching DNA or social standing, but by the far more powerful bonds of understanding, acceptance, and unconditional love. Fim de Historia. Dear listeners, we hope you've been moved by Emma and Nathan's journey from that life-changing moment in a Boston restaurant to their beautiful wedding day. Their story reminds us that genuine connections can transcend social barriers, and that understanding differences can lead to our greatest blessings. If you enjoyed this emotional journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it by clicking to your left. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up if Emma and Oliver's special bond touched your heart. Every day we bring unique stories that explore life's complexity and the power of human connection. What was your favorite moment from Emma and Nathan's story? Let us know in the comments below. We can't wait to hear from you.